Appreciate your help. Oops, everybody's coming in. Hi there. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. Wow, a lot of people. I'm very shy in front of a camera. That's not true, but okay. Hi, Catherine. Thank you. Did I meet you as CAR back in Sacramento? I might have. And I hope you're all going to Long Beach, right? Because Long Beach is next week, and it's right in your back door. It's such a great opportunity. I've always said that everything I know about real estate, I've learned from my association with the association. It is the place where you just learn all of this stuff. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm going to go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, I'm being told that you can put them in the chat. And I will make every effort to answer them as you put them in there. So some people like to wait until the end and stuff like that. If it looks like a lot of stuff, then maybe we'll do that. But I think in the meantime, I think I'm prepared to go ahead and answer them as we go along. So and Sabrina is sending a message to everybody. Antitrust avoidance, absolutely. Boy, that's good, Sabrina. I like that. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started. And again, please, this is intended to be interactive. So I have a lot of slides, but we're going to move through them pretty quickly. And so I don't want to run out of slides before I run out of time. But okay, so that being said, I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. There we go. Everybody can see that okay. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to close the chat for the moment. And there's my name. JD after my name means juvenile delinquent or whatever you want it to mean. I do have a Juris Doctorate degree. I have a law degree. I did graduate first in my class in law school in real estate transactions. So it really does. I got the American Jurisprudence Award. It doesn't mean anything to anybody unless you're a lawyer or a judge. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So there's my telephone number. I am happy to help you in any way that I can. My email address as well. Happy to help you in any way that I can. So I do want to thank Orange County and obviously Sabrina, who is helping me today by keeping the PowerPoint or keeping the presentation going. But I do want to thank the Orange County Association for having me here today. So thank you all very much. And I know that education is key for your association. And so, and I put in there your association because I am also a member, a primary member at OCAR. So anyway, so here's some things about me that you probably don't know. I do have a broker's license in several states. Got my license in 1979 before most people were born. And I do continue to teach real property law for attorneys, continuing education for attorneys. So I'm considered a fairly credible source, I guess. I was chair of risk management for the National Association of Realtors for their West Group. And I am currently chair of legal affairs for the state of California. And 2 years ago, I was chair of the risk management and consumer protection. So again, all of that, I say that it's not bragging rights. I just want you to know that I want to help you. And that's my whole point behind doing all this. Okay. So that being said, most all of my presentations can be found at my YouTube channel. So it's at Burke Real Estate Consultants, Inc. I've just redone the buyer representation agreement. If you want to see my bend on that, you can go to that YouTube channel, and I'll pull this up again at the end, and I'll even give you a QR code thing to snap on. But I want you to be okay, and I am approved by the Department of Real Estate to teach the buyer representation agreement for credit for continuing education. But again, it's a live in-person class, and that won't be this class today. So that being said, please also visit. The Department of Real Estate asked me to do a podcast, Legal Matters and Documentation in a Real Estate Transaction. And so that's where that link is. It's on the DRE website. We're going to be talking about subjects today that appear to be legal. some of these are going to be. I am not a practicing attorney. I want to make that really clear. I do a lot of trial work, mostly testifying as an expert witness. And so I'm a court certified expert witness on standard of care, also on agents' duties of inspection and disclosure. So those are kind of my specialties. I do a lot of trial work, and mostly defending real estate brokerages. And again, I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. So our conversation today is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of your broker, nor for that of your attorney. Please consult with them as appropriate. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our webinars, again, as I said earlier, are intended to be interactive. Please utilize the Q&A button, or in our case, we're going to do the chat button. I didn't know coming into this which one we were going to use. So the chat button, and some of you already discovered the button. It's really cool because once I look at it, then it, it's going to let me know when you put something in there to ask questions, offer input. I do look forward to hearing from you. I'm a practitioner like you. I don't practice law. I'm a real estate broker, and I do buy, sell, leases, all kinds of stuff. And I have made a small fortune in open houses, and that's kind of why I'm here today. In my very best year in real estate, I made $2.2 million, a lot of which came from my open houses. So I'm going to show you the secret to that. I'm going to give this to you. I want you to have it. I want you to do well. And then everybody be emailed a copy. I think that's tomorrow morning. I think Sabrina's going to send an email out to everybody. Your education department at Orange County Association of Realtors will be sending you a copy of everything. I am also happy to send you. I'm going to send everything to them so that they have it, and then you will have it as well. I want you to have it. Some people are worried about work product and all that. I want you to have everything I have. So thank you for joining us for our discussion. Holding a successful open house. Okay. Why would you want to hold an unsuccessful open house? Thank you, Sabrina. Sabrina's monitoring me. Thank you so much for that. Why would you want to hold an unsuccessful open house? And I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that I've seen people do. I've been management at 3 of the largest brokerages in Southern California, and their productivity coaches and their head of their mentor programs and things like that. I'm going to talk to you about some of the things I think I see people do that they expect to be successful when they're doing this, and it's not always the case, right? So Albert Einstein coined the term, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? And so sometimes we do there we go. Sabrina's already got it up there. Good for you. So click on the link. Sabrina's putting it in the chat. Just click on the link and get all my stuff. And then I have 2 more forms that I added since then. So I'll get that to you as well. So sometimes we keep doing things the way that we've always done them. And we expect a different result. And so that's what happens in our open houses. If you've always done open houses a certain way, then I'm going to ask you that you keep your mind open for some different ideas and some different suggestions. And again, I've been very successful with this over the years, and it's the same thing today. Open houses are one of those things. We've got some different things we're going to talk about, like what you can talk about, what you can say, what the paperwork's going to look like. And so I'm going to talk to you about those items today as well. Okay, so we will be looking at some forms, but it's not a class on forms. If they want me to do a class on forms, I'm happy to do it. So holding an open house, like real estate, is not a passive business, but so many of us treat it like a passive business. I was talking to a broker this morning, and I said, so do you hold open houses? And they said, yes. And I said, okay, when do you hold them? Well, Sunday, 1 to 4. And I said, well, that's like the worst time to hold an open house, right? And I'm going to drill into this for you in just a second. So let's put this another way. Real estate is a full contact sport, okay? And an open house is the way for you to get in front of people, but I'm going to tell you, it's not just the open house. It's what you do in preparation for the open house. Is everybody okay with that? All right. The more energy that you put into doing your open houses, the more likely that you will have a positive result or a positive outcome. I've known people that put a sign up in front of the house and it's off the beaten track, and people will find them. It's just an amazing thing. So, but you got to put some effort into it. I've got other people that I have an agent that was working with us in Temecula who would put out 500 signs. It would take him days, and he would hire people to help him, other real estate agents help him put the signs out, and then they would all sit at the open house because they knew they were going to get jammed full of people. So we'll talk about that as well. So let's talk about the 3 stages of open houses. And I got to watch my clock. I'm just always worried I'm going to run out of time. So the 3 stages. So we're going to talk about the before. So what are you doing in preparation for your open house? Then we're going to talk about the during. What do you do at your open house? And then finally, what do you do after the open house? Most people, when they do open houses, they focus on the during, right? But I'm going to tell you, you're missing it. I don't care what happens the day of. I care what you did before, and I care what you do after. And I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to give you some hints on how to really make people remember you. You want to be memorable, okay? So, all right. So, and by the way, there will be a little bit of a discussion on safety as well. This happens to be, September happens to be Realtor Safety Month. And I did tell Elsie that I would be talking a little bit about that, but it'll come up in the presentation. So again, it's all in the presentation or preparation of what you do, okay? All right. So the time and energy that you spend in preparation makes all the difference in the outcome. I find that to be true in my business. Again, I'm a practitioner like you. I prepare for listing appointments. I prepare for open houses. I prepare for almost everything that I do. Okay. Let's talk about the before. So the before. First thing I want you to do, confirm with your broker. Get your broker's policy on how you're going to do your open house. It's very, very important. You need to listen to your broker. And I say this all the time. Again, I protect brokerage firms. I protect agents. And I want you to confirm with your broker that what you're doing is okay. You'll read your office policy manual, do things like that, right? But marketing pieces are the hot one. So I had an agent who, I've required all of our agents to send me their marketing pieces before they go to press. And the marketing piece said, essentially, it said, get out of the neighborhood while you can. Well, as you all probably know, that's a blockbusting, right? It was on your state exam. And so, so I contacted the agent. I said, what's that about? And they said, well, they're building a water treatment plant right next door to the subdivision. And I thought I would let everybody know. And I said, okay, but what you wrote on your flyer doesn't sound like that. It looks like something completely different. And again, I teach fair housing. So we just did some ad smithing on that postcard that was going to go out and change the words around a little bit. But boy, when I first read that thing, I just went, oh no, please don't send those things out. Okay, so check with your broker, make sure that they are confirming that your marketing pieces are okay. And then I put in here doing open houses for other brokers. So again, I have a lot of conversations with the California Department of Real Estate. I have a lot of respect for the Department of Real Estate. They've been very good to me over the many years. But when we start doing other open houses for a broker outside of our own, so let's say you're with the Red People and you're going to do an open house that you have the listing on, you're okay, right? So you put your sign in the yard, you do all that kind of stuff. Or sometimes we'll do open houses for other agents within our company, right? That's okay as well, because remember, the listing belongs to the broker. So what I refer to as the uppercase A, agent, okay? But when you're doing an open house for another broker and you have a sign in the yard that says, that says the blue people have this listing and you're with the red people, you need to confirm agency when people come into this house. And we've made it so easy for you. People are complaining about Sitzer Burnett, the decision and all that kind of stuff. Hey, listen, this just opened a lot of doors for you. I think it's been great. I mean, I really do, because I've been teaching this for decades. And I'm going to tell you something. When somebody comes into my open house, January the 8th of January of 2008, the National Association of Realtors changed its code of ethics to require you to ask a buyer who comes into the open house whether or not they have a buyer representation agreement with another broker. Okay, now I know it's caught on really well now, but that wasn't being the practice back in 2008, and so they made it part of the code of ethics. Right now, if you are holding another broker's house open, you might be misrepresenting the fact that you are with that brokerage. So all you got to do really is just have your agency disclosure. We're going to talk about that. We got a lot of things that we're going to be. I'm going to show you some of the forms that you're going to have at your open house. And again, I think the forms will speak for themselves. And I think that people understand now that our landscape has changed significantly. Okay, so just be very careful. You want to make sure you make that agency disclosure. And I've always taught people to have an agency disclosure at the open house anyway. Have it filled out ahead of time, and then you sign it in front of the client or the person that comes in the door. Remember, they are a customer until you have a buyer representation agreement. Then they become a client. Okay, all right. So doing open houses for other brokers could be problematic. DRE has said that there may be issues with undisclosed agency. Okay, so very simple. You just disclose the concept of agency. Okay, all right. Google the neighborhood. Now, I say this, and I got to tell you, and I'm using the word Google, although there are a lot of ways. Your MLS is amazing, my MLS as well, but it's an amazing resource for determining what the neighborhood looks like. And I'm not talking about demographics here. I'm talking about the physical layout of the neighborhood. So some of you remember I was involved in the fires of 2013 in Scripps Ranch. And so, there were people that got trapped in the neighborhood. Fortunately, we didn't lose anybody, but you get trapped if you don't know how to get out of there when the fire's coming, that kind of thing. You got to know what your exit strategy is. So you want to Google the neighborhood, get a map, look at it from 30,000 feet, right? Check out the neighborhood visually ahead of time, drive the neighborhood. Let's talk about your safety. Drive the neighborhood just so you know where the best places are, for example, to put your open house signs. And we're going to talk about placements, one of the most important things you're going to do. So check out the neighborhood visually, drive the neighborhood, get an idea, exit strategies, things like that. Let's talk about your safety just real quick. Prepare an escape route, right, from the house, from the neighborhood. You might have to do that as well. All right. Did you notify someone that you will be at the open house? And so how about the neighbors? When you're knocking on doors, because I'm going to tell you to knock on doors before your open house, days before even, and notify them. Let them know that you're going to be holding a house open. Invite them to the house. Are there people that can identify you in the event that something goes wrong? So how about the neighbors? How about your office? Right? Let your office know, somebody in your office know. Did you prearrange a calling time, preferably hourly, that if you don't communicate at that predetermined time, that they will contact the person that you were to contact will contact the authorities. Okay. All right. So again, remember, I'm a big risk management guy and I want you to be safe. It's very, very important. So let's talk about the preparation. I'd like you to get a walk list. And I know that could be an ADA violation, right? Because not everybody is able to walk, but get a walk list. The title companies call it that. You can get the walk list from your database. Your MLS database has a really good one, or you can get one from your friendly neighborhood title rep. And then we have all kinds of software that will do that. Essentially, what I do is I print it I know it's a lot. I print it on paper and I put it on a clipboard. And I'm going to talk to you about the significance of the clipboard in a minute. Okay. But I put it on a clipboard. And now when I walk door to door, I'm looking for pieces of information. I don't knock on the door and say, hi, Mr. Smith, how are you today? Because that's just not going to be appropriate. Right. But especially if the name's not Mr. Smith. Okay, but what I am going to do is I'm going to know the door, and then I'm going to take notes. When they answer the door, I'm going to write things down, things that they say. They become part of my database later. This works great, by the way, if you are farming your own neighborhood. So on my YouTube website, again, Master My Farm is a real good presentation, I think, that I did on how to own your neighborhood. And so, get that list, keep notes, do things like that. Excel friendly, and I'm not a big Excel guy, but you need to make it so that you can adjust the columns and things like that. Is everybody okay with that? Get that list, have it ready. You're going to have it on your computer, but you're also going to print it when, and before you go for your walk. Okay, so put it on a clipboard. All right, and this is important. Now, we are before the open house, and I don't mean an hour before. Okay, we're before the open house. Get a walk list, put it on your clipboard. Okay, we're going to talk more about that in a couple of minutes. All right, so be sure to use social media. And so, I'm not a big social media guy. I'm just not that bright. I can't figure out how to do half this stuff, but you do need to put things on social media. I mean, I've got a software program that I just click on the icon and it publishes it for me. But before the big event, right? You want to put in your social media information about your event. Use as much as you can, right? And you want to do it again on the day of the event, prior to obviously having the event. I don't know, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. I think these are all really good resources for you to get the message out. You need to get that message out of what you're doing at that event. But I want to talk to you a little bit about that. I've been in meetings with the Department of Real Estate where they have said things like, be careful what you put on social media. Right. So, it was an interesting comment. I always get a lot of humor out of these things, but the DRE said in one meeting that I was in, they said, we can see what you're posting, right? And so, it was really kind of funny because the comment was, we don't need a warrant, right? It's social media. So be careful what you put on social media. Obviously, don't ever make any comments. Don't disparage another broker. Don't be doing things like that. I would caution about representations that the house is vacant. You don't want to do that. You don't want to put any representations on there that you might be alone at the open house. I think those are dangerous for you and for the property itself. So are you making it look like the house is vacant? So I know that there's staging software out there now. I'm trying to think what's called Brown Box or something like that. There's software out there that you can actually virtually stage a property that may be vacant or something like that. Be careful about doing those kinds of things. I did have a court case where the agent, it never went to trial, but the agent had photoshopped out the power lines behind the house. And so, of course, the buyer hadn't seen the house. They bought it without seeing it, and it created some problems for the agent. So, Maya, are all of these things recommended if you are an agent of the same brokerage conducting the open house for the listing agent? Yeah, either you're the listing, Box Brownie, thank you, Curtis. Yeah, either you're the agent or the agent whose house you're holding open is with your brokerage. Now, if you are holding an open house for another brokerage firm, again, get permission from your broker. It's very important. You want to get permission from your broker to do that. I like an email, things like that, and make sure that you get your broker's approval to do that. It's pretty important. Most of the brokers that I know, the bigger brokers anyway, they don't want you doing open houses for other agents. But again, check with your broker and see what their policy is on things. And thank you, Maya, for that question. And thank you, Curtis. Box Brownie. I had it backwards, didn't I? Brownie Box or Brown Box. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that. So are you putting pictures on the internet that make the property look vacant, right? Or are you, the flip side of that is, are you virtually staging it? You need to have disclosures that say that you're virtually staging the property. You definitely want to make that point known. You could be putting your broker in a bad spot as well. Okay, so are you going to be alone at the house? Now, I do not believe in holding open houses alone. And I'm going to talk to you about what the many resources are that are available to you for not being alone at an open house and how to protect yourself at that open house. And so someday I'm going to do a class on, what can possibly go wrong, right? And I don't want anything to happen to anybody here. All right. So put it in the MLS as an open house. Your MLS has got some great tools. So not all MLSs have these tools where they will market the property for you. So put it into the MLS as an open house. And if you're not, well, okay, utilize extensively the advertising and the marketing that is there, because that's your best resource, right? And it's a lot easier if you are the seller's agent. And again, I say that because the seller's seller's agent has access to the listing. But listen, I always tell people, I say, listen, if you're not, ask the seller's agent to do it for you. In fact, give them specific instructions of what you want to put in there. If you're holding an open house for someone else, I think they want you to be successful at the open house, more so they want to sell that house. And so if you're holding an open house for yourself, obviously this is very easy, but if you're holding an open house for another broker within your company or another agent within your company, then you might want to tell them what you want to put in that in the marketing that they're doing on their thing. Nobody ever thinks to do that, but I'm going to tell you, I've used it extensively and I've been pretty successful with it. Okay, broadcast the open house to your database. So I've got about 8,800 people in my database. I've collected them over the years. I actually don't send it to all 8,800. I send it to probably about 800, about 10% of that database. People that I know that are like the A buyers, things like that. But broadcast it to your own database. And again, we've already talked about your social media. Prepare your open house signs. And this is the part I always get a kick out of open house signs, right? They're kind of one of my favorite subjects. So not 5 minutes before you're supposed to be there. So I would sit in my office, because I was, at one point I was relegated to have to, because I was management, I would have to sit in the office. And even on weekends, I'd be there just because I actually like what I do. I hope you have that same feeling. But I see people come running into the office and it's like 1:15 on a Sunday. And I go, what are you doing? And they would say, well, I'm getting ready for an open house. I said, what time does your open house start? And they said, well, it starts at 1 o'clock. And I said, what are you doing in here at 1:15? And so they said, well, I got to get my signs. And I said, well, you should have been there because people are standing in front of that door at 12:45, right? So you should have gotten there early. And we're going to talk again why I think that, 1 to 4 is the worst time to do an open house. But anyway, so not 5 minutes before you're supposed to be there. So invariably, they would be in the office picking up their open house signs at 1:15, and they'd be back in the office at 3:45 because there wasn't that much traffic. All right. And I'm going to talk to you about how to get traffic because I want you to have traffic. Okay. So not 5 minutes before you're supposed to be there. All right. Make sure that your signs are DRE and NAR compliant. So I had a broker call me on the phone. He said, the Department of Real Estate sent me a letter. They said, send us a check for $10,000. And I said, whoa, okay. That's a cite and fine, they call that. It turns out that another brokerage had turned in one of their agents, one of this broker's agents, for holding, using those generic signs that didn't have any reference to the brokerage or the company name or the DRE numbers or none of that stuff. Now, the DRE does change their requirements on a fairly regular basis. I got tired of pulling up that notation, but if you go to the DRE website, you'll actually see on the website, what the requirements are for your open house signs, your marketing. And again, if you can't find it, send me an email. I will send you the link on where to find it. I do this all day long, so I'm happy to help you. But make sure they're DRE and NAR compliant. Each one of them has different rules, but but they pretty much cross over with each other. I'm going to tell you that if you are NAR compliant, you're probably DRE compliant. Okay. All right. So good. Again, check with your broker. How many times do you need to do that? Once. Okay. All right. Your name, your licensee's name, your broker's name, your license number of each licensee and the advertisement, if it's on a sign. I would recommend these things since I go out and I buy my signs, like 50 of them at a time, and I get a great deal on them. I make sure I have all this stuff on there because as the DRE changes their position from time to time, I'm always within that bucket of what they're looking for. Okay. And so it's just a respectful thing. You clearly don't want the $10,000 letter. And by the way, the broker asked me, what should I do? And I said, pay it. Right. And they go, pay it? It's $10,000. I said, well, look at it this way. If they are investigating you, they're going to charge you for the cost of the investigation. So the broker paid it because and then went after their own agent, who of course left the company right away. But anyway, make sure your signs are DRE compliant. Okay. And again, if you can't find the link, let me know. I'm more than happy to pull that up for you. Signs and accessories, send me an email. JJ, send me an email and I'll tell you where I get all my stuff. I don't really advertise on my webinars, but we get a great deal on all these things as far as putting signs up and as far as buying the signs and all that. So please send me an email. I'm happy to get that for you. Let's see. My next thing. The broker's license number may be optional. All of our for sale signs, the post signs, all have the DRE number for both the agent and for the brokerage, okay? Because we want to make sure everybody's covered with that. So plan their placement. Now, this is where I want you to write things down. This is going to be cool. So where are you going to put your open house signs? If I knew how to do a graphic, I would do it, but I don't really know. So remember when you went to the neighborhood, ahead of time, you scouted out the neighborhood. I think we all know that we want to put our signs, we want to put a lot of signs in place, leading people to the house itself. And again, as I said earlier, I had a broker who would just put a sign in the front yard of the house, and he got traffic. But obviously you got to be there. You must be present to win. So, but that's not always the case. I think what I try to do is to try to bring them off of busy intersections, things like that, bring them in. I'm not a big fan of the A-frame signs, only because they tend to get legs, as we say. Linda, who I gave my brokerage firm to, she lost like 6 of those A-frame signs the very first open house she held open. And I said, why'd you buy A-frames? So anyway, there was other issues involved, but anyway, plan their placement ahead of time. So you always know you want to put them on corners, right? So you want to put them, the first, leading them into the area, and then you want to put another one every time you got to make a turn. And based on what I'm going to tell you about when to hold your open house, I don't think you have to worry so much about other people taking your sign down and throwing it away. But we do have that, right? Sometimes other agents will put a sign up that in front of yours or things like that. I mean, it happens, right? So it's not like they mean anything bad by it. But sometimes there's a bunch of people holding an open house. That's why I never wanted to hold open houses when other people were holding them open. So plan their placement ahead of time, and this is going to lead you into one of the most important things that you're going to do. Knock on the doors of the houses, specifically on street corners. Now, why do I want you to do that? I want you to knock on every door in the neighborhood, right? That's your job. Your job is to FaceTime with people. Your job is knock on the door. Hi, how you doing? I'm holding an open house, such and such. Here's the address. Here's the client handout, things like that. Or here's a flyer, or here's an invitation. I had agents do little postcard invitation, tiny little things, 3x5s, and they would hand that, inviting people to the open house. Please tell everybody make a big deal out of it. It's okay. I used to, if it was a gated community, I would go up to the guard at the front of the gate and I would say, hey, I'm going to be doing open house this weekend. Are you going to be here on Saturday or on Sunday or whatever day I'm going to be holding the house open? And if I got a yes answer, then I would say, okay, what do I need to do? Because I don't want to upset anybody. And of course, half the place has a real estate license, right? What do I need to do to be okay with you, your security, all that kind of stuff? Where can I put my signs? Where can I do all that stuff? Now, by the way, on the day of, I come back and I give them a lottery ticket or two, or I give them a coffee card that has money on it, right? Things they can go down and get a cup of coffee. So I would just get a bunch of these things. In fact, one of the big coffee companies with the green awnings, if you buy 100 of their coffee cards, they'll put your logo on it. Okay. Again, send me an email. I'll send you that link. Okay. I teach sales and marketing for the real estate professional at UCSD. So in addition to teaching attorneys continuing ed at UCSD. So, but specifically on the street corners. Why? Because when I knock on the house on the street corner where I plan to put my open house signs, right? Ask for permission. Listen, you're probably the only person who ever asked for permission. Okay. And so will they remember you? Excuse me. Remember, our goal is to be memorable. They will remember you forever because you were that one person that asked for permission. Everybody else, they put the sign in there, they go through the sprinkler line or something like that. They do damage to the property. And if you ask, you say, hey, I just want to make sure I don't go through any water lines or anything like that. You have a place where it's okay for me to put it. And I'm always like Mr. Humble when it comes to that. But you're probably the only ones that ever asked them the question, may I please put a sign in your yard? Okay. okay? And by the way, we're going to come back to this when we go to take our signs down as well. All right. So ask for permission. It's really, really important. And by the way, remind them that where you're holding the open house. Okay, I'm going to be doing it right up the street from you. Your neighbor, Bob has said that, that they trust me to sell their house for them, and I'm happy to do this. Now, folks, our market is changing. And so I think it's changing for the better. I think we're going to have more parity between buyers and sellers now. And I'm seeing this all over the country. And so, remember that creates opportunities for you. And some people talk about it as chaos. I talk about it as kind of a leveling of the field. But, again, make sure you're asking permission. It's just common manners. Okay. All right. So you want them to remember you forever, and they are going to remember you because you're the only ones that ever asked permission to put a sign in the yard. Okay. So you'll return later and you're going to give them a gift card as a thank you. So either a gift card, whether it's a coffee card or something to, one of the bookstores or something like that, or again, lottery tickets. And I don't know, you hand them 5 lottery tickets, they cost you $5. They have an opportunity to win millions. I would staple my business card to them and then just say, hey, you know what? And this is on the houses on the corner, so you're not going to go broke doing this, right? But, hey, will you remember me when you become a billionaire? Right. And so they're going to love that, but they're clearly going to remember you. Okay. So we got to get good about being in front of people and talking to people. So you're going to come back later. You're going to give them a gift card, and that's going to be, as a thank you for them allowing you to put your sign there. Okay. All right. Let me see. Where am I? Invite them to the open house. Remember about your safety. Remember, you want people to know where you're going to be. And then you don't want to just have your sign show up pointing someplace. They don't know where it goes. You wanted to talk to them. You wanted to invite them to that open house. Okay. So are there any questions so far? I want to slow down just a little bit because I want to talk about a couple of things that some experiences that I've had with these open houses. Anybody have any questions? Put them in the chat, please, for me. And I'm happy to take care of those. Otherwise, I'll keep going. And okay, good. I guess I must be telling a pretty good story. Okay, so remember something. There's a rule. There's a direct connection. Do you provide a thank you card to the corner homes every week? Every time I do it. Every time I do the open house. But Maria, you're asking a really good question. And here's why. So the Department of Real Estate says that you can give people things for providing you with business. Now, in this case, they're not actually providing you with business as long as there's no expectation of remuneration. But I think if you give them a gift card for letting you put the sign in the yard, I don't think you're an employee of the owner of the property. I think you're okay. But yes, I do it every time I'm holding an open house. And I found in my experience that Sunday 1 to 4, I don't get as much traffic because, there's like 85 other open houses out there. And so people have other choices. So the ones that come to me are usually the ones that have been through the gauntlet already, right? But I always do my open houses. I'm going to show you what I do in my open houses to make this really effective for you. But Maria, thank you for that question. It's a good question. Yeah, I give, what's $5, right? I mean, I don't know. It's not even worth $5 anymore. But if we take $5 and we buy 5 lottery tickets, and again, we're not promoting gambling or anything like that. But anybody else see a box blocking the slides? Yes, thank you for that. And thank you to Sabrina. She reminded me how to get rid of it. How's that? Is that good, Maya? I think I got rid of my boxes. No, it's still there. Oh, no, you don't see it. Okay. Well, anyway, we still one in the center. Oh, that's because that's the chat that you can't see. Okay, I'm going to close it. All right. So there, now you don't see it, right? It's kind of a weird quirk with Zoom. And Sabrina and I were just talking about this. It's kind of a weird thing. It shows up. And when I do my presentations on Wednesday night, I do a coffee with Kevin, which is a free call in, play Stump the Panel with Kevin. And people were saying, wow, I see those boxes on your page. So I did not know how to take those out. Sabrina showed me how to take those out. I think that's so cool. Problem is I can't see, if there's a chat question. So I guess I'll just have to go in there every once in a while. I'll see, there's 2 of them. I see it perfect. Thank you. No, thank you. That's so cool. I'm glad that we could do that. So I got to hide the floating controls. They all go away. All right. Okay, good. So the more signs that you put out, now I think there is a direct correlation between the number of signs you put out and the number of people that show up, right? How many times have you seen an agent put up one sign? I had a guy, my hometown is Del Mar, right? And I had a guy in one of the offices where I was management who would put out 25 signs. And so it didn't take long before everybody thought he owned the neighborhood. He didn't have a single listing. He was holding a listing open for another agent within the company, but he put out 25 signs. They were everywhere. Now Del Mar's got some pretty strict open house sign in the right of way, which they define everything as the right of way. So again, check your local ordinance for that. Make sure that you're not, jumping in front of something that you shouldn't be doing. But his feeling on it was, what are you gonna do? Fine me $25, But he put out 25 signs. And he put them everywhere. Now, at this time of year, when politics is a rage right now, I don't know. You might be able to get away with stuff that you couldn't get away with before. But I'm not proposing that you break the law. I don't want you to do that. But check with your local ordinance on that. Check with your broker. And I think your MLS actually has your neighborhoods defined as to what the requirements are. Okay, so the more signs you put out, the more traffic you will get. So think about this for a second. You put up one sign, you might get a couple of people, right? Well, when I'm holding an open house, I got other things to do with my day. And so I want to make sure I maximize the return on my investment. If I'm going to spend a couple of hours at an open house, then I want to make sure I get as much traffic as I can possibly get. And so we had this guy in Temecula, and I said this to you earlier, 500 signs. And again, he was buying them in bulk. He was getting a screaming deal on signs, but he was buying a whole bunch of them. And they all give you these discounts. So almost all, I can't say all. But that's what he would do. And then he would have other agents within the company help him put the signs out. But then in exchange for that, he would tell them where. He'd have a map and he'd tell them where to put the signs. And then in exchange for that, they were in the rotation at the open house. So, the first people that came in, the first buyer that came in, it had to be a legitimate buyer, couldn't be a juvenile, and it had to be somebody that could actually, who was of age of consent, they could actually contract. And then that would be yours. And the next one that would come in, that would be his. The next one come in, that would be hers, and that's how they handled it. And so, but what do you think? 500 signs? They were mobbed, and they would hold it open all weekend. They would start at 8 o'clock in the morning, like a garage sale on Saturday morning, and then they would end it on Sunday night at 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And so I said, why'd you stop at 5 o'clock? Why didn't you go until 7 o'clock? Right. And so there's always like, what do you want to kill us or what? I go, no, I want you to be successful. I want people to come in. So we'll talk about that. Let me check my okay, no new chat. Okay, good. I'm gonna get rid of that. Hide floating meeting controls. Okay. All right. So the more traffic that you will get, put out at least 20. And most of the sign companies give you a price break at 20 signs. So my recommendation would be to do that. Again, your broker probably has an approved vendor list. You should be using that. If you don't have one, send me an email. I'm more than happy to send you the people that we work with, because we actually have an approved vendor list that we give out to people. Mine, of course, is loaded with lawyers because I do so much work with the attorneys, but I'm happy to share that list with you. So put out at least 20 signs. You got to make it worth your while to be there. You have a limited opportunity of time that you have on that day to maximize your profits. So now is not the time to be frugal. Okay. So, some people that can only afford a sign, and I'm sorry if that's the case, but again, remember, DRE compliant, NAR compliant signs. Check with local ordinances, make sure that you are not stepping into a conflict over those rules. And again, I restate it, your DRE NAR compliant open house sign is probably the best marketing investment that you will ever do. Okay, so I think we all know that floor time has become kind of a thing of the past, and I think that the internet did that. But open houses, and people say, well, I don't get as much traffic at an open house. And I say, well, maybe you're not doing it right. But open houses, people want to look at houses. It's just the way that it is. And so when I take a listing, I want to make sure I hold the open house first before I let anybody else hold it open, right? Because I want all the nosy neighbors to come in. I want to have that conversation with the neighbors about, are you looking to buy another house? Or do you know someone who wants to buy another house? These are the kinds of important conversations I want to have. And we're going to talk about what you can say and what you can't say here in a minute. So think about what political candidates do when they're running for office. I remember in Del Mar, the code enforcement guy said, we call this the crazy time. This is where we just let everything go, right? And signs all the way up the street. Why do they put all those signs out? Well, because they want you to remember their name when you're in front of the ballot. Okay. And so it's the same principle that you're trying to do with your 20 signs. All right. Okay. Lead people in from the major intersections. Again, check your local ordinances for their rules, and different places have different rules, so be careful. Let's talk about the during. Why is that in there? What's the best time to do an open house? And so this is one of my favorite subjects, right? So, here's my open house schedule: Friday, Saturday, Monday, 1 to 4. If I'm going to do an open house, I'm going to do it Friday, Saturday, or Monday, 1 to 4. Why? Well, first of all, because nobody else is doing it, right? Second of all, because, unless I'm working a day job someplace, what we call that, dual career, right? But, Friday and Monday, I mean, you're in Southern California. This is the time when people are flying into town, to go do the job interview. They're going to spend the weekend there. And those are a lot of times your best candidate. Okay. So Friday, Saturday, Monday, 1 to 4 is okay. It's all right to do that. But then let's talk about Sunday. So on Sunday, I think your Sunday open house has to be 10 to 1, 4 to 7. Now people look at me and they go, oh my God, that's 6 hours. I say, yeah, it's almost like a job. I mean, think about it, right? I mean, you work 6 hours. And by the way, you think you're going to make 5 million this year, working 6 hours on one day a month, or, one day 4 times a month. I mean, these are things that just defy gravity, right? They just don't make sense. So, but I would always hold them open 10 to 1, 4 to 7. I had a business partner at one point, and you should have somebody with you at the open house, but literally we would shut the open house down at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Right. So, yeah, he would get there 10 to 1. We'd both get there 10 to 1. Then we would take 1 to 4 off, go to the beach. And then from 4 to 7, we would come back, right? Because that's when people were coming to the houses. So we would catch them on Sunday morning. We call it Sunday gone to meeting, right? We would catch them on their way to, church, or, whatever, they're doing on Sunday morning. A lot of times for me, they were heading to the beach. And so I would catch them on the way to the beach. 1 to 4 I found was when everybody else was holding an open house. And so, why would I want to do that? I'm 10 to 1, 4 to 7. I'm the only game in town. And again, at 4 o'clock, when, the other agent has already cleaned up, packed up, turned all the lights off at 3:45, right? Because they want to get out of there, because they're thinking, oh my God, this is like a lot of work that I have to sit here until 4 o'clock. Let's close it up really fast before somebody else comes in. Now, you think about whether that applies to you, but I think if we have that mentality where we're only working 3 hours a week, I think, and the expectation is that you're going to remember Albert Einstein, expecting a different result, right? But when I was doing my open houses, $2.2 million in 1 year, folks. I'm telling you, I had the Ferrari. I'm going to bring a picture of it next time I do this. I'll put a picture up on the screen, my little black 308 Magnum PI car, right? I had the whole thing going on, okay? But that's from open houses. Right. I hate spending money on marketing or on advertising and things like that, but I will definitely do these open houses because they don't really require a lot of effort, and people come to me. So, okay, Sunday, is everybody good with that? 10 to 1, 4 to 7. Let me see if there's we've got a couple questions. Okay. So, thank you, Sabrina. What's your email? Thank you. JJ, thank you for asking. And Sabrina, thank you for putting that in there. Kevin at BurkeRealEstateConsultants.com. Do you still do 4 to 7 when daylight savings? Great question, Maria. Great question. So let me close that part of the screen. Whoops! How do I make that go away? Okay, there we go. So as the times change and daylight savings time. So I remember, my wife. She says, do the days get shorter in December? And my answer was, no, the days don't get shorter, but the periods of light are shorter. Okay, so, and she hates that because I ask her so many questions. I'm constantly asking her questions, right? So, but the periods of light get shorter. So Maria, actually, or was it Maria? I think it was Maria, right? Oh shoot, where's my chat? Okay, so yes, Maria, thank you. Thank you for asking that question. So I gotta learn how to do that, the shortcut keys. So I'm gonna adjust it the other way, right? Because I think that, as we're heading into, what we in Southern California call winter, I think our daylight is going to get to be 6 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So I'm going to move it down to, I may keep it at 10 o'clock, but I'm still going to not violate that rule of 1 to 4. And so, because I don't want to waste my time, right? I have other things to do with my day. Okay. So somebody asked me the other day, my house is oceanfront. I haven't stepped in the water for 15 years. You just because I actually like what I do. So, but again, if I'm doing that, and Maria, your question's a really good one, adjust this as you go. But again, if you're holding it open Friday, Saturday, Monday, 1 to 4 is okay. But I wouldn't limit myself to 3 hours, especially again, if you're getting to the office at 1:15 to pick up your signs and you're back in the office at 1/4 to 4 because, people stopped coming in or something like that. I found the highest traffic I got was at 4 o'clock, 4:15, 4:30 in the afternoon. That's when everybody started coming, right? They're packing it in from the beach or from wherever they've been doing all day, and they just want to stop by, the open house really quick, right? And so I found that was my best traffic. But all these people that were closing up their open house at 1/4 to 4 were missing all of this, which was fine with me because I want whatever's out there. Whoever's going to come in, they got to come to me because everybody else is shut down. I've watched agents who, people will show up and the agent's closing up the open house and they'll show up and the agent will say, "I'm sorry, we're closed." Like, you're what? So closed, right? Yeah, well, come back next weekend. What? It's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen. So every opportunity to be in front of people. Remember, we were talking about the before when we were talking about talking to people, ahead of time to tell them about the open house 2 or 3 days ahead of time. Make sure I would hit the entire neighborhood if you could. Or if you're not going to hit the entire neighborhood, then hit everybody on the streets on the way to the open house. And then at a minimum, the corners, but I think that's blowing it. I think you really needed to. I had a gal by the name of Kylie, and she had these little invitation cards, and she would punch a hole in them, and she would tie a Hershey's Kiss to it. People love chocolate, right? So she would tie a Hershey's Kisses to it. She would knock on the door, and people would answer the door, believe it or not, and she would say, "Here, have a Hershey's Kiss. We're doing an open house this weekend. I want to make sure, excuse me, you got a personal invitation to that open house." And while they're eating away on the chocolate's really hard for them to slam the door in your face, right? So, but she was a master at that. It was just great to watch. But be careful about doing what other people are doing. Try to do something different. Shake it up a little bit. Okay. Let me see. No questions there. Okay. All right. So hide floating meeting controls. Okay. So make sure that you have your reliable cell phone. All right. So I want to emphasize this. You need to have access to get a hold of people. You need to make sure that it has signal strength. And again, at the house, not at your house, but at the open house that you're going to be holding. So again, this is something you do ahead of time where you go to the house, make sure your cell phone works, right? You want to make sure it's fully charged. The worst thing that can happen to you is that the phone dies at your open house. Now, who lets that happen? So, my sister would call me on the phone and we would start talking. And about 3 or 4 minutes into the conversation, it would just go dead. She'd call me back a couple hours later, and this is the middle of the day. And she would call me back a couple of hours later and say, "My cell phone died." It's like, God, I'm glad nothing serious was going on, right? It wasn't an emergency or something, but she just never charged her phone. I mean, she would go days until it died, and then she would start charging it. But you need to make sure it's fully charged. Me, I've got several cell phones, right? Because I have numbers for my West Coast brokerages. I have numbers for my East Coast brokerages. So, I've got phones with me all the time, okay? And again, keep it in your possession at all times. carry on a conversation when you're showing the property. So, have the phone to your ear when somebody comes in, and then put the phone down, right? But so that they think somebody is still listening, to their conversation, especially if something goes wrong. Make sure the receiver can hear the conversation, and the person standing in front of you knows that their visit is being monitored. Is everybody okay with that? I mean, that's kind of important. I don't want to scare anybody, but there have been some bad things. So we want to be careful about that. Okay. As you arrive at the open house, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Are there any questions here? No. Okay. So as you arrive at the open house, where'd my screen go? Sweep the house. I don't mean, well, maybe with a broom, right? You're kind of staging the house, preparing it. Now, mind you, I'm not there at 1:15. I'm there at Sunday at 9:30, right? But as I put my signs up, I find people will come just because the sign is up there. So I always put up my signs from the farthest out, and then just walked them all the way to the front door, that kind of thing, right? And when I took them down the opposite way, right? I always took them out from the front door first and made my way back. Obviously, I followed the breadcrumbs to get there. But when I get to the house, I want to sweep it. I want to go through it. I want to make sure I want to double check it. I want to check that all the doors and windows are secure. All right. If the property is not secure, might be best to exit the property, right? So if you get there and the door is open, it could be that the last person in there didn't lock it, but there could also be a bad guy there, okay? Notify the seller's agent. You might even notify local authorities. Check with your broker. What's the policy on that? Hopefully you're there with someone else, in which case you have safety in numbers. I think that's on the OCAR website, safety in numbers at an open house. It's kind of important, all right? Remember that MLS rules require that you keep the house key in your possession at all times. That's kind of a national rule now. Used to be we would leave it in the door, and so I put in here not left in the door lock. That's what we always did. And then I have people calling me on the phone saying, I was holding this open house and I can't find the key anywhere. And I would say, well, where did you last have the key? Well, I left it in the door. So now, how many possible scenarios can you think of why that key got legs? Why did that key leave the front door, right? Unless they forgot and they have it in their pocket or something like that. But listen, leaving the key in the door lock is never a good idea. Okay, all right. When you're showing the property, all right, when you're showing it, direct the customer. Don't follow them. Don't lead them. Don't be in front of, and I'm calling them a customer specifically because you don't have a buyer representation agreement with them. And I'm going to talk to you about how to get that signed. It's really easy. But when you're showing property, you want to direct the customer. You don't need to say, oh, and there's the bathroom. I mean, it's like there aren't a whole lot of rooms in a house that have a toilet and a sink in it, right? If it has a toilet, it has to by code have a sink. But I don't think you need to point out the obvious. I used to tell people not to stand in front of the view. So if they come in and this place has a spectacular view, you don't want to be standing in front of it. You don't want to be coming between them and the view, right? So I always told people to back up against the wall and do it that way. Okay, so you could limit the number of visitors in the property at a time. You could consider staggering them. If you're alone, I think that I really don't want you to be alone at the open house, but I'm going to show you some fixes for that. You could lock the door behind each entrant. Let's talk about serving alcohol. So at your open house, always check with your broker first. In brokerages where I've written their office policy manuals, we prohibit alcohol. If you're going to do alcohol, I don't want you doing it at the house. I have a lawsuit right now where the agent was at an open house that was being hosted by a different brokerage firm, and they were drinking alcohol. And of course, we've got the heels and everything. Slips on the stairs and scratches her leg, and next thing you know, we're talking to lawyers. Okay, so there's a lot of problems with having alcohol at an open house. Clearly check with your broker ahead of time. If your broker's got bad experiences on that, they may have a different position on it. Probably not a good idea. Remember host liability, and so I talk about host liability a lot, in the legal field. if it's open to the public, right? So like an open house to the public, you may be required to have an ABC permit, right? And so, and I know I was the president of the Chamber of Commerce for many years in Del Mar, and I'd have to go down and get the ABC permit whenever we would have a wine tasting. And so we would have a wine tasting. We'd invite everybody. I mean, we'd have thousands of people show up at this thing in what we call the Plaza in Del Mar, and we got the wineries to host them. And there were some advantages to that because they also brought their own servers and also brought their own insurance, things like that. We still had to have insurance to protect us, but just remember, if you're open to the public, you might have to have an ABC permit, okay? If it's open only to the real estate community, best to have it catered. Okay, I've had people tell me, realtors drink, and I go, I don't know. I don't. I just happen not to, but but I think it's best to have it catered. Like I said a second ago, with the Chamber of Commerce, they brought their own servers who were trained, to know when to cut it off, right? And remember, people could be coming to your event and they've already been drinking out in the car, and they come in and they get the cheap drink or whatever, and then there's an accident later on. There's all kinds of host liability for that. So, and they also know when to ID attendees. You definitely don't want to be serving alcohol to a minor. We dodged that many times. So that's the alcohol. Anybody have any questions on the alcohol? Let me see. I got a couple of chats up here. Let me move this out of your way. Can we have a live social media while doing the open house? Oh, that's brave. For our protection. I don't know if I would do a live social media because not everybody wants to have themselves taped. In addition to that, do you have permission of the listing agent, the seller's agent? Do you have permission of the owner of the property to have that property social media, live social media? I know the DRE is going after some brokerages right now who are, the agents are going through other people's listings and videotaping the vacant house or whatever, videotaping it and putting it on social media. And the DRE says, we think you're making it look like it's your listing, and it's not. So they'll be looking for permission somewhere. So yeah, so I probably wouldn't do the live social media unless it's a fixed camera at a fixed place where people can choose to come in. Again, permission of the owner, permission of your broker, permission of the seller's agent, all those things. I would get all that in writing. But I guess so. You probably could do that. Just be prepared for what could possibly go wrong, right? And so that would be my caveat on that. But good question. Thanks for asking that. Okay, let me close that one down. All right, so let's talk about flyers. So I like the concept of flyers. However, I think they're counterproductive. And so, I've spent a fortune on flyers. I would have, I would go out and I would print 100 flyers. All my listings all had a brochure box. I want you to listen to this. This is pretty good. So all my listings had a brochure box, right? And so, I would put 100 flyers in there, and the next day, all the flyers are gone. Has anybody else had that experience? All the flyers are gone. Where'd they go? What, did people eat them? I mean, there's no way 100 people stopped by and took a flyer out of this box. And so, a week later, I'm on Caravan. I'm out looking at other people's properties, and I see all my flyers at the bottom of the bird cage, right? So the birds are pooping on my flyer. They're grabbing all this free paper, and so I just learned very quickly. So here's the fix for that. Okay, so I don't put flyers in brochure boxes anymore. But I said a second ago, all my listings have brochure boxes on them, right? So what do I have? I go out and I print up this little thing that says, oops, sorry, someone got the last one. Okay, please email or call me and I'd be happy to send you a flyer. Okay, and I have that laminated. Okay, they're less likely to take off with that, but I have it laminated. I have that in the brochure box, and who's going to want that? I mean, they're not going to collect. I mean, it might be, I don't know, another real estate agent. I don't know, but that's what I do on mine. I get a lot of calls from people. You'd be surprised. You don't get the call unless you ask for the order. Okay, so flyers are kind of a big deal. Okay, question. Welcome. Thank you. Okay, so. That's how I handle it. I like that little flyer that says, oops, sorry, somebody got the last one. And again, I have it laminated so it doesn't get legs. Okay. All right. And I got a lot to tell you about the inside of the house. So best to remove all of the flyers from the brochure box outside of the house. And we've talked about that already. But I also think they should go out of the inside of the house. Now, let me think about this for a second. So I'm holding an open house. People come into the open house. And what's my first instinct? Well, I'm very shy. You can tell I'm very shy. And so I want to give them a flyer. So I'm going to tell you just the act of giving the flyer. I say, do not hand out flyers at the open house. Just the very act of giving out the flyer at the open house. And we do that because it's kind of like a crutch, right? It's kind of like, well, here's a flyer. What are some of the negative things that are associated with handing them a flyer? Well, first of all, it comes between you and the customer. Okay, remember, again, they're a customer. They're not a client until they sign the buyer representation agreement. But they're a crutch, they're because you don't know what else to say. The problem is once you hand them the flyer, they have no reason to talk to you anymore because you've given them everything. They know where the house is. They know what it looks like. They know it's either in a location they want to pursue or not. But if you give them the flyer, now what are usually you've given them the price, you've given them numbers of bedrooms and bathrooms, you've given them maybe MLS information, things like that. So I just don't hand out flyers to people. I put all the flyers away. Okay. But I am going to have some things there. I'm going to talk about that in a second, some CMAs and stuff like that. But I just don't hand out flyers. I'm not going to do that. Oh, you want a flyer? Well, let's see if the house meets your needs, right? Is this what you're looking for, kind of thing? Happy to send you a flyer if it's that important to you. Remember, a lot of times when people ask you a question, especially at an open house, and I had explained this to Linda, but especially at an open house, when people ask you a question, it's a lot of times it's just because they don't know what else to say. Right? Like, I guess I should be asking a question, right? And then a lot of times, especially with me, because I'll be talking with them, I'll be asking them a lot of questions, and they'll feel like they should be involved in the process. They should be asking a question as well. And so a lot of times they're just processing what you said a minute ago. Okay, you don't need a degree in psychology to know this, but sometimes you'll say things and they've got to think about it. Now, we already know that they're all being trained, that they're going to have a buyer representation agreement with people, right? So, this is good news for us. This is going around across the country. But it comes between you and the customer. When you're handing that to the person, it's usually in between the two of you. You're creating an artificial field in between you. And I would recommend not doing that. I want to break down those barriers, right? I don't want that to be in the way. Okay. And by the way, same thing on the brochure box out in the street. I would sit in my open house, and that's another thing. I don't sit in the house anymore, but I would watch the van pull up. I would watch the door open, and I would watch the 5-year-old run out and grab a bunch of flyers out of the box, get back into the van, close the door, take off. Well, I blew it. That was somebody I could have gotten into a conversation with, but literally the 5-year-old got the flyer. They didn't do that on their own, right? They were told to go do that. And I just now lost an opportunity to talk to these people. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get into some forms here. One of the things that I used to do at the open house, let me go back a screen because I don't want to distract anybody. But one of the things that I used to do is I always stood outside the house. I guess we are going to talk about that in a second, but I'd walk up and down the street on my phone, do stuff like that. Invariably, they would like, well, who's this kook, walking around? I don't want you to get hit by a car. I don't want you to break any laws. But, I would definitely make myself obvious, and I would make eye contact with people. We're going to talk about that. Okay. All right. So have a form, a CAR form RA on hand. And I want to take you to that form. And the only way I can do that is to share my screen here really quick. So where's my forms? Here we go. That's number 5. I don't want number 5 yet. These are some things. These just came up. So I'll send you this if you want it. Question: can I post an open house on social media, but post the name of the agent and the information? That's a good question. Post the name of the agent, because remember, you have to give credit to the brokerage that has the listing, and probably the agent's going to want that as well. And the information they have on their flyer, make sure you got their permission to do that. But make sure that you give credit to them. That's very, very important. I'll frequently, in the neighborhood where, Master My Farm, which is another YouTube video that I created, I will frequently, let me get rid of that screen. I will frequently, a new listing will come up in the neighborhood. I'll go start knocking on doors, right? Not my listing, not my brokerage's listing, but I'll knock on doors and I'll say, hey, have you wondered how much that house is going for down the street? And of course, they all want to know, and they don't want to call the brokerage because they don't want the broker to sell them something, right? So I just tell them, say, here's how much it's on the market for. Right. And so what a great opportunity. I can knock doors in a neighborhood. Of course, the seller's agent should have been doing that, but I'm going to do that, probably preemptive strike, especially in my farming area. So here's my open houses in a post NAR settlement world. And I apologize, Sabrina, I didn't give you this yet, but this is a publication that just came out, an NAR publication. And then we have another one, Consumer's Guide, Open Houses and Written Agreements. And so, these are good things to have. The problem is, and I've had this complaint about organized real estate for decades, right? Only 45 years that I've been complaining about it. But we do so many great things. We produce so many great products, but then we forget to tell you they're there. And so I will send these to you. And obviously the link will be, is there a link? It's on the NAR website. I know most people don't ever go there. I'll send you the link too, okay? But I wanted to talk to you about that RA form. So my RA form is my realtor acknowledgement form, all right? And so I know most people are like, oh, what's that? I've never heard of that thing. I bring this to my open house because I want people to know that there is a difference between somebody who has a real estate license and somebody who is a realtor. And these are critically important distinctions. Again, I do trial work on this. So if they are, so we have what, 435,000 licensees in the state of California, okay? But only out of that number, only 185,000 of them are realtors, right? So where are all the other ones, right? They're doing other jobs, things like that. I don't know. I always say to people, I subscribe to a written code of ethics. Now, I did not say that they don't. I said that I do, and I want the public to know that. Can you see that screen? Yes, you can. Okay, and then I have a question up here. Where can I get this form? Yes, please send me an email, or actually, if you don't get it, Sabrina is going to send you an email. So it'll have all these forms in it. The other two I showed you in the beginning, she doesn't have that yet. I apologize, Sabrina, but I'll get that to you after we're done here today. But I use this RA form religiously. I remember when we created it. And of course, I'm always in charge of proofing it, but not everybody has a real estate license as a realtor, right? And so this explains that. And so I always use this form. It's the first form I ever put in front of anybody. Okay. And so, and why? Because I'm going to sign it in front of them. And a lot of times I will sign it in front of them and I will then give them a copy of it because I want you to know that this is what it is. Now, again, mind you, you're going to fill this all in and bring a dozen of them to your open house. Okay. And why? Because we want them to sign it too. And so remember, your job is to get people to sign things. I mean, I'm now put my legal hat on for a second. You want enforceable agreements. You want, people, you want to be able to defend your position on things. Yes, they signed it. So I'm going to bring a bunch of these to my open house and I'm going to sign it in front of them and I'm going to have them sign it. And then, I always put two in front. They sign this one, I sign that one, and then we switch and rotate. But this form actually makes that discussion. And so now, and I do this on my listing appointments too, now they're wondering, what about all those other places that I went to? Nobody else brought one of these forms out for me. Were they realtors or not? So now I have them questioning whether the people that they're working with are real estate licensees or whether they're realtors. Does that make sense? I don't say anything disparaging about anybody else. I'm just saying I subscribe to a written code of ethics, right? I don't say they don't, because maybe they do. I don't know. But I've gone in on listing appointments and I always say to the seller, I always see the business cards of other real estate agents on the desktop and I go, oh, wow, are they still in real estate? Things like that. So I have fun with it, right? You got to have fun. But look here, realtors pledge themselves to the code of ethics, okay? And again, as Sabrina knows now, I teach the code of ethics. So anyway, I sign it in front of them. All this is filled out in advance, my phone number, all that stuff. And then I ask them to sign it. And if they have a heart attack about it and they say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not signing anything. And you just say, hey, my office requires it. I have to disclose to you the concept of what a realtor is other than a licensee, right? So we got a couple 100,000. We have more non-realtors than we have realtors in the state of California. And by the way, one of the things that came down with the Sitzer-Burnett decision was on the settlement agreement, applies to realtors. So at the California Association of Realtors, we have moved forward and we have created, we are creating legislation that will make the requirement to have a written agreement broad across the entire state. Okay, because literally the agreement left out those people that were not realtors. And so we wanted wanted it to apply to everybody. And so that's why we've sponsored that legislation. It's Senate Bill 2992 for those of you that are keeping score. Okay. Question: where can I get the forms? Send me an email, or I'm there. Sabrina's going to have them. She's going to send them to you as well. Do you give this to all visitors? Absolutely. Oh, Maria, God, that is $1 million question. Why do I give it to everybody? Because I want to treat everybody the same. I don't want anybody to come back in and say, well, you gave them that form, but you didn't give it to me. What, you don't like me, or I'm not this, or I'm not that? No. Treat everybody equally, treat everybody fairly, and your forms will help you do that. So the answer is yes. I give them to everybody that comes in. I mean, everybody in a party, right? So if it's a couple, then I'm going to give them one. I'm not going to, but they're going to sign it. Look down here at the bottom. I have them sign it. Okay. I have them sign the form. And so, now they know. And trust me, I assure you this, they're going to read this later. But you want to tell them if you get pushback on this, just like I get pushback on the agency disclosure. And so, again, remember, the law requires that you disclose the concept of agency. And then later on, we confirm it on paragraph 2B of the RPA. Okay. But I want them to remember me. And you are absolutely going to remember me when I have you sign this form. And they're going to read it. That's why I give them a copy of it. But that's something that they take with them. You don't want them reading it in front of you. Okay, everybody good? Thank you for that question. It's a really good question. Always give everybody the same thing. Okay, be very consistent about that. It helps you in that antitrust world. Okay, and your ADA world as well. So let me get back over here. So have that RA form on hand, sign it in front of them. The old form, by the way, make sure you're using current forms, but the old form, you were the only one who signed it. So the new form, everybody signs it. Okay. So hand a copy to the customer to sign. Okay. And I always say to them, we're getting used to signing things. I mean, you want people to be used to signing things, I think, right? I mean, isn't that what we do? So in real estate, we get people to sign things. And I never use the word contract. I use the word offer. It doesn't become a contract until everybody has signed it. And then usually the only time I use the word contract is when somebody's trying to get out of it. And then I'll pull in the contract thing, right? But other than that, it's an offer, it's an agreement, it's an understanding, things like that. But I do call it what it is, okay? So, but I say to the client or to the customer, we're getting used to signing things. We still haven't created an agency relationship. All we've done is explain to them the difference between a realtor and a licensee, okay? Again, 435,000 licensees, only 185,000 of which are realtor members, okay? All right. Have all attendees sign the property visit and open house advisory. I can't stress the importance of this. This is so cool. So let me pull that up. This is going to be my, oops, I'm going to have to start moving this screen. Sabrina, I hope this works. Okay, here we go. So here's my property visit and open house advisory. And by the way, in the material that you're going to get from Sabrina, I've numbered it. So this is the number 2 thing. So property visit, open house advisory. We came up with this form a handful of years ago. You have inherent risks. Have anybody ever gone to a baseball game and seen somebody get hit in the head with a baseball? I mean, there's this principle of law called the assumption of risk. You actually, your ticket says right on there that you are assuming the risk of getting hit by a fly ball when you come to this game. And so they want to kind of keep you from suing them and stuff like that. So here's what this is: recording devices. All right. So we want to tell them that there's the potential for recording devices. I don't know, Linda can tell you who's showing up at the house a mile away. She's got cameras all over the outside of the house, nothing inside the house, because I think she wants to shoot them. So, they can't prove it, but, whatever. But anyway, so there are recording devices in these houses. People are listening to you. I have cases where, the buyer is suing because, the seller had a camera and they were listening to the conversation. And when they were negotiating with their agent about what they were going to, put an offer in on, and now the buyer finds out later on that the seller was listening the entire time. So let's make sure that we do this, folks. Make sure you're giving them this form. All right. This is before they start walking the house. We're going to sign paper. Okay. Visitor safety, you're aware that there are problems. I mean, you remember in the beginning of the COVID thing, we had everybody wearing booties. Then we had the slip and fall cases where they would put the booties on and they would slip on the hardwood floors, things like that. So, make sure this is going to go a long way towards protecting you. Animals or pets, and that applies to whether, I don't allow people to bring pets in other than legally required service animals, or in some cases they are what's the other word I'm looking for? Service animals, emotional animals, things like that. But animals, there's an animal at the house. We can't work on your safety. The animal at the house, first of all, I make sure they get rid of all the animals out of the house. I don't want them there. But I just want you to know that we do not have control. We can't ask the animal later on why it bit somebody. And I've seen this happen. And in my open house presentation, the ones that I've recorded, there's actually reference to somebody who got, thank you, Curtis, thank you, emotional support animal, thank you. I couldn't get it at that moment. Thank you for that. You guys are great. You really are. I mean, this is awesome. It's like, it is interactive. I love it. Okay, so I don't want to run out of time. So animals and pets. I could tell you some real horror stories, but you sure don't want the 2-year-old to get bit on the face, things like that. So, we need to be aware of that. And that leads us into number 4, which is accompanying minors. You hold the house open and then the couple walks in and the 5 kids scatter to the wind, right? I don't know. Are they taking stuff out of drawers? I don't know what's going on with that. But we want to make sure that this is why I want you to have more than one person with you at the open house, because I want you to be able to control the traffic, because the bad guys will come in and split you up, and we don't want that to happen. All right. And then again, risk of injury, there's my assumption of risk. And then down at the bottom, the visitor signs it. We put this in the MLS in all of our listings. We want everybody that shows the property to sign it. We want that to happen right away. Okay. All right. Back to my during. So that's my PVOH form. Before they enter the open house, you can make that a requirement, right? Have an open house visitor non-agency disclosure and sign in. And that's the OHNA. Now, this is a new form. This just came out. So let me show you that form. And again, they're numbered on our thing here. So here's my open house visitor non-agency disclosure and sign in. You might choose to use this, but remember that we're going to talk about the PSRA form in a minute. We're going to talk about the buyer representation agreement can be for 3 hours. It can be for 3 days. It can be for 3 weeks. It can't be more than for 3 months. It's going to be void if it's for greater than 3 months, unless it's a partnership or corporation or something like that. But anyway, I'm going to have this sheet. And one of the reasons I really like this sheet is, look at this. This kind of takes the place of that guest registry. So I actually have a guest registry that I created for my brokerage and for several other brokerages. If you want a copy, send me an email. I will send you a copy. Be explicit. Don't just say, send me everything you talked about. But I'll send you our open house registry. It contains the do not call list language on it. But look at this. You've got this going on, right? But I think one of the things that we're missing was permission to call them after the open house. And that's what I wanted to see. So I'm talking to them right now on that. But that's a great little form. And look at that. It's a list. And maybe you sign the first one and then somebody else signs the rest of them. That's all. Everybody good with that? Okay. So completed in advance. Obviously don't sign it and be prepared to use it. Have an agency disclosure. It's my favorite document. It's California Civil Code 2079. It's the Form AD. Whoops, question. Can I see that form again? Yes. Let me get back to it in just one second. Let me finish this thought. Thank you for asking. So have an agency disclosure on hand, especially if you're holding an open house for a broker that is not your own broker. Okay, and that's pretty important. All right, so that agency disclosure, remember, you're not creating a contract with them, but you are disclosing the concept of agency. Our agency disclosure form is a beautiful form. It discloses the concept of what agency could look like. Because when you are talking to a buyer, you know that you are talking to them, you're going to enter into single agency. If they're going to write an offer on a listing that happens to be with your broker, now you're going into dual agency. Okay, so that you need to be very careful about that. And by the way, not all states allow dual agency, and I think you're going to see it in California that we're going to restrict dual agency. You're going to start, I think you're going to start seeing designated agency and things like that, which is showing up in other states. I teach in Virginia, I'm a broker there as well. Okay, so question, Hill Nisa, you've got the form. Is that form meant to be used by multiple parties visiting the open house? Or should you use one for each distinct party as they arrive? So yes, good question, Maya. This form is multiple parties. Is that what you're talking about? How do visitors respond when asked to sign documents? You know what? They sign it. I make it a condition. It's a requirement, right? I remember I had an agent who was she was really good, and she would go out. I'm not going to recommend that you do this, but she would go out and stand on the road and stop traffic, and I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get killed. And so she would go out and stand on the road, and then she would walk around the driver's door, and she would say, are you seated here at the open house? And they would say, yes. And she'd say, oh, good, it's right here. She would reach in and turn the car off. I'm going to recommend that you not do that. There are a lot of laws that you could be breaking at that point. Form at the top. Is that it? Denise, is that it? But she would take him to the, thank you. So she would take him into the house and she would pull out the guest registry before we had all this stuff. And she would go, sign here. And the way she said it, you figured, you're going to get beat up if you didn't sign it. So I never had anybody refuse her. I never had anybody refuse me. I don't know, maybe I'm just charming, but at the end of the day, you want them to get used to signing things. That's really, really important because that's what you do for a living. And we want to make sure that you are compliant on a number of different levels. Okay, so that was my so we were talking about the agency disclosure. So here, did everybody get that form? Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Absolutely, thank you. I thank you for being here. I really am very appreciative of you. So this is my disclosure regarding real estate agency relationship. For those of you that know paragraph 2B of the purchase agreement, relationship is spelled incorrectly. I've tried to get them to fix that for I don't know how long, a decade, and I'm the guy that sends in the things like on your buyer representation agreement, they spelled property wrong. They left the T out. So now it says property. And so I send them stuff. They go, here comes Kevin again, right? So that's why they won't let me on standard forms. Eventually I'll be chair of standard forms, but it just kind of cracks me up. But this is Civil Code 2079. If you don't understand agency, remember back in October of 18, we changed listing agent to seller's agent. We changed selling agent to buyer's agent. Those were state exam questions, right? So because they knew we were confused. We didn't know if I'm the selling agent, do I represent the seller or the buyer? And it's like, we didn't know. And so that's one of the reasons why we changed it. You have to write these things in plain English in order for them to be enforceable. And so that's why CAR actually rewrote the legislation here on Civil Code 2079, which applies to the innocent buyer and seller and stuff like that. Now these forms are required in all real estate transactions. Okay, so what happens when I have dual agency? What are the responsibilities of both the seller and the buyer? And if you really want to understand agency, read this page 2. I was asked to proof it. And the only mistake I could find on it was down here at the very bottom where it said, where does it say here, agent? It said Agnets. And so, this is back 25 years ago, back when, spell check. What do you think, right? So, okay, we're good with that. I'm going to move on to the next form. Okay, so that's my agency disclosure, especially if you're holding an open house for someone other than your brokerage. Thank you. Listen, folks, and thank you for that comment. I got to tell you something. I think there's a lot of comedy in what we do, really, and I'm in the most serious business in the world because I'm in defense, right? But I think there's a lot of comedy in what we do. So, question, LOL. I don't know what that means. Okay. Anyway, so let's see here. Completed in advance, obviously. You sign it first. I'm laughing. Good. Okay. Remember to bring your sense of humor to the table. I find when I go on a listing appointment with a seller, if I'm, like this all uptight about things, I'm probably going to have some issues. But if I'm in there having a good time, and everybody else is having a good time, we realize we're just selling your house, right? So you sign it first, okay, because you are disclosing the concept of agency, okay? Then they sign. All right. And you give them a copy right then and there. You want to make sure you give them a copy right away. Okay. All right. So I showed you the agency disclosure. Pushback. Anybody here ever gotten pushback where they wouldn't sign an agency disclosure? What I do, I put that form in front of them for a number of reasons. And one of the biggest reasons is I want to see how I'm doing, right? Have I made them comfortable enough that they're going to sign things? And I always say to them, I say, well, it's not a contract. It doesn't create a contract. And I'm not your agent. I just have to disclose by law the concept of agency. I was in a deposition with our 5 attorneys grilling me in a deposition, 4.5 hours. And I'll never forget, I walked out and this was the subject. I walked out and one of the attorneys turned to me and said, I didn't know that. So, and obviously opposing counsel. And so he goes, I did not know that about agency. So, I teach attorneys. I think I've already told you that. But listen, not everybody knows, what they're supposed to know, but agency disclosure is a really complicated subject. And so I want to make sure you're doing it right. But when my client says, well, I'm not signing anything, then that tells me that I haven't proven my value to them yet. They're not comfortable signing something with me. Okay. And remember, in the very beginning, I asked them if they have a buyer representation agreement with someone, because if they do, I just say, hey, thank you so much. I got a couple of things I still need you to do. I want you to see the RA form. I want you to see the PVOH form. I want you to see the open house advisory form. I'm just not going to take them to the next form, which is going to be our buyer representation agreement. So again, I put this in here. The law requires we disclose the concept of agency. And remember what I said earlier, we confirm agency in paragraph 2B of the RPA, okay? All right, it does not create a contract between us, and that's the part they're afraid of. But it also tells you you haven't won them over just yet. It does not mean that I'm your agent, okay? Is everybody okay with that? All right, but you're having them sign things, right? I mean, that's kind of important. I want them signing stuff. I want them to be in the now. All right. So, and people, if you don't get them to sign stuff, then you're going to put the agreement, the contract, whatever in front of them, and they're going to like have a coronary. And it's like, you don't want them to do that. You want them to get used to signing things. I bring along a blue pen, by the way. So, lawyers always bring blue pens. I frequently been asked to sign stuff, and I'll always ask the other lawyer, I'll say, can I borrow your pen? I didn't bring my blue pen. And so they go, oh, yeah, here, because they all have blue pens, right? Because blue ink, because in the old days, you didn't know when you made a photocopy, and that's what we used to call copies, or Xerox. When we make copies of things, blue ink would show up as black ink. And so we always want to know which one was the original document. And we can always tell by looking at the blue ink. Okay. All right. Always ask the question, do you have a buyer representation agreement with another broker? You always ask that question. Remember what I said earlier? The NAR Code of Ethics in January of 2008 required it. Now, I know in California, and I've had some, I was on the defense strategy committee with some of the biggest brokers in California. And I said, gee, that buyer representation agreement seems to be a problem in Southern California. And another broker, very big firm, said, oh, no, Kevin, it's all over the state of California. I always thought it was Southern California had a problem with it. And it's like, okay, well, now you don't have a choice. Now you got to have it. And so now the risk is that if you don't ask them the question, and I always tell them, California Department of Real Estate, I always spell it out. Don't say DRE, right? California Department of Real Estate and the National Association of Realtors. So I spell it, I write it all out. I don't give them initials, because they may not understand the initials and it takes them longer to process what I'm saying. I want them to hear it. Code of ethics require me to ask. And I assure you, the cows come home. The Department of Real Estate is looking at what we're doing ethically as well, even though they're there to enforce the law. But they're looking at the code of ethics as well. Okay. I assure you of that. All right. And then now my screen is going to block that last thing. There we go. Okay. Otherwise, there could be potential torts. And, one of those, of course, is interference with contract. You've interfered with the contract between the buyer and the other agent that they had signed an agreement with. And now today, I always ask the question, because it always, before the requirement got into place that you have a written agreement, right? Before you show property either physically or virtually. Okay. And by the way, I've broken the buyer representation ground paragraph by paragraph. It's on my YouTube website. I encourage you to go take a look at it because I think I did it paragraph by paragraph. You can't miss it. So, but in the old days, I would ask them if they had one, and then what would they say? No, I don't think so. What's that? And then that would give me an opportunity to explain the value of it and my value with them. Today, I have to ask the question because chances are pretty good that they're going to have one with somebody. And if they've got one with somebody, I don't want to interfere with that. Okay. If they've got a contract with another broker, then, I don't know what that agreement looks like. It could have an exclusive, it could have a non-exclusive, they could have conditions on it. They're looking at my listing in Del Mar, but their agreement with their broker says Escondido, or in our case up north, the agreements in LA County or LA, whatever, I don't know what that agreement says. I mean, sometimes they'll actually have them with them. I used to hand business cards to my clients that because they were a client for me, because I had them sign the agreement way ahead of this. But they would go around to the open houses and they would just hand the agent my card and say, I'm working with Kevin. And so I just thought that was a great way to keep people. Now, I mean, did people still try to solicit them? Yeah, but then you got to deal with Kevin. So it's just, but that's what I did. I gave him my business card and I had him wander around and say, give this to the agent right away. Don't be shy. Don't be coy about it. You want them to know that you're working with me. Have a buyer representation and broker compensation agreement on hand. And I love, you notice we changed the name of commission to compensation. There was a lot of reasons why we did that. And I'm not going to do the class on it right now because that's not what we're here for. But that's going to be CAR form BRBC. So hang on one second. And again, I'm going to pull up, questions. Let's get the questions first. So is the agency disclosure form required even if they aren't agreeing to use you or to use you are their agent? Okay, I'm not their agent, and I think I answered that question probably after before you asked, or after you asked it. I apologize for that, Maya. But yeah, you need to disclose the concept of agency, especially because we're going to have some forms that they have to sign. Otherwise, you really don't want to be talking to them. All right. Is it an opportunity and can't hurt to put it in front of them? Yes, that's also the case. I think it's just a great opportunity to talk about what you do. And not everybody does this. And so, listen, I always say to people, don't do it because everybody else does it, right? I mean, if everybody else jumps off the cliff, you're going to go with them. And I always found that, in my first 5 years in real estate, I went to every class I could get my hands on, all the free ones, right? Because I didn't have any money, right? So I would go to all the free classes. And then agents would ask me, they would say, how come you're selling so many houses? And I would look at them, I would say, I don't know, I thought everybody did this, right? I'm averaging 18, 22 transactions at a time. And by the way, our purchase agreement was 1 page. But just remember that, don't care about what other people are doing, care about what you're doing. And get advice from good people, right? Your broker is a good resource for you. If you want to make $1 million, hang out with people that are making $1 million, right? And again, I will help you. If it starts to look like a long-term thing, then we might have to, have an agreement. But at the end of the day, I want you to be good. I want you to be okay, right? Because if you look good, you make me look good. So for an open house, we must have everyone sign both the visitor sign in and the agency disclosure. No, you must, though, before you start talking, before you have a substantive conversation with them, then we've got some forms that for sure we're going to want to talk about. And I'll bring those up for you again here in just a second. Okay. Whoops. Question again. Got it. Yes. Thank you. It's not a complicated thing, but it can be very confusing. I get brokers call me all the time with questions on these things. And like I said, if you look good, you make me look good. I want you to look good. Okay. So, it's important. All right. As I said earlier, we give you so many of these things, but we never tell you where they are. And, I don't need to be better than anybody else. I want everybody to be, doing what I'm doing. Okay. All right. So let's pull up my BRBC form. So here's my BRBC form. Whoops. I lied. Number 5. Yeah, my agency disclosure. So we changed all the forms so that the only document in front of an offer or a listing or anything like that is always the agency disclosure. And then we put all the rest of the forms down at the bottom. And again, I teach forms. So, we put everything down there. I was so glad they did it. And this is part of my template. So there'll be some things, but you can see it's a buyer representation and broker compensation. So when I'm talking to the person who's standing in front of me, do I want them to sign this? Absolutely, I do. And by the way, I'm going to fill it out. Do they have to? No. Can we make it a condition of them showing property? I would make sure you check with the seller or the seller's agent first to make sure that you can make that representation, but you might not want them in the house unless they're going to sign something. But I'm going to show you some easy ways to do this. And so we have non-exclusive, which means they can play the field, they can go do other things. And again, I'm not going to do a class on this form. Or we have the exclusive. There's two ways to go with that. And if you're not comfortable with the exclusive, then do the non-exclusive. Again, talk to your broker. We have a lot of trainings out there right now on how to do these things. And my specialty is always how to get them to sign it. Okay. But I'm going to have my buyer representation agreement. All right. And because I want them to sign something with me before we go around the house. Now, then we also have the property showing and representation agreement. So this is my PSRA form. So if you're not comfortable over here getting your buyer representation agreement signed, then maybe you'll opt for this form. And this is the PSRA form. And again, the property showing and representation agreement for use with a prospective buyer for up to 3 open house or other properties only. So we put a limitation on it because really we want you to have the buyer representation agreement. And watch out now when January rolls around, that new law is going to be in effect. Stay tuned, and I will tell you what's happening because I will know what's happening before the end of this year. But that's what's in front of them right now. And so the Department of Real Estate is watching that as well. And it's Assembly Bill 2992, if you want to look it up. That's what they're working on right now. So the PSRA agreement says I can use this with the prospective buyer. I don't have to go full on to the buyer representation agreement. I personally would do the buyer representation agreement because I think they're going to sign it for you anyway, right? All you got to do, a lot of times, all you got to do is ask for the order, ask them to sign it, and they will. But again, remember, my buyer representation can be for 3 hours. It can be for just today. It can be for just tomorrow. You know, it can have a lot of impact. But this is the form I guess we're going to use if we're not comfortable with the other one. You know, it's interesting in my career, everybody I've asked, a broker, you know, why don't you use the buyer representation agreement? And their answer was always, I would never sign one. And I would always respond with, have you read it? And of course, 100% of the time, no, we've never read it. Okay, why don't you read it? I'll go over with you the salient points on it, and happy to help you with that. But I don't know why you would work with someone without one. I mean, I don't understand the concept. And now, of course, the law says you have to. So, or the Code of Ethics says you have to. It will be law by the end of the year, beginning of the year. So parties to the agreement, show or tour property, right to represent. Here we got our grid again. So you can see we have all these things that we're already taking into account. Is everybody okay with that? So buyer representation agreement, broker compensation on hand, completed in advance. So CAR does not fill in these forms in advance. And that's part of that Sherman Antitrust Act, which, by the way, was 1898. Sherman Antitrust Act was a law put into effect before the turn of the 19th century. And they are enforcing it today. And that's part of your Sitzer-Burnett and the Department of Justice and all these people. So we don't want to run afoul of that. So we want to make sure that CAR is not going to fill those documents in advance because that would be price fixing, right? Does that make sense? That would be restriction of trade. That'd be a lot of different things. So, but you can fill it in advance. But when I'm looking at my form, going back to my buyer's, I fill all this in. This is all filled in when I go to my open house. You know, I know how much I want to get paid. I know, you know, I may not know what property they're going to be looking for, but I know whether it's exclusive or not exclusive. I know all these things. So I'm going to fill the form out. There's really not that much to do, folks. You got the first 3 paragraphs. You know, it's literally page 1 is where the meat of all this is. And that's been the Department of Real Estate's issue, is that, you know, they're afraid that we'll stop talking, you know, explaining the form to people when we run out of things to fill out, because there's really nothing else to fill out after page 1, right? Look at this, right? Not until I get down to the bottom. All that stuff explains page 1. So you want to make sure you're doing that. And if you're going to be exclusive, you got to have an initial this page here. I can tell you this, the Department of Real Estate will be looking for these. So, you know, get good at it, right? Take classes, you know, do things like that. Okay. Question, do we get any compensation if they sign property showing agreement? Yes. It's right on the form here. So, you know, assuming you want compensation, but remember, if you put 0 in there, you get 0. If you put 0 in there, you may not receive anything more than 0 from any source in a transaction. So, you know, do whatever you're going to do. Again, they don't go into the lengths about not to exceed 30 days, but this is a short form, right? But the buyer representation agreement says, shoot, sorry about that. Buyer representation agreement says not to exceed 3 months, right? If representation period exceeds 3 months, this agreement is void. Void means it never happened in the first place versus invalid. It's a different thing, unless the buyer is a corporation, LLC, or partnership. Okay, everybody good with that? Anyway, take my contract law class. I mean, I have a ball with this stuff, but or go to the YouTube website. I break this all down into its component parts. Okay. Thank you for asking that question. Great question. All right. So, whoops, another question. Let me see. What does that say? Should retain these signed forms on file? Oh, Maya, God love you. So, for a certain period of time after the open house, do you know that the Department of Real Estate was going through brokers' files looking for PED forms 3 years after they were signed, right? And if you didn't have the PED form, because remember, anything material to a transaction has to be in your broker's possession. You have to have a copy of it, right? So the Department of Real Estate was literally going after brokers' files looking for those PED forms, because the PED form was required. Remember, the governor made this great big thing about it. Okay. So yeah, you should keep, how long do you have to keep things? You have to keep things for 3 years. Anything signed by a party for sure for 3 years. Okay. But anything material to the transaction for that same amount of time. Maya, thank you for asking that question. It's a great question. Okay. So we did my OHNA. Boy, we are moving along pretty slow. My PSRA, I just showed you that. Property showing representation agreement, complete in advance, be prepared to use it. CAR has an open house library. All right, $49.95 a year. I think I've given you most everything that's in the library. I think you should insist on business cards, right? And I'm talking about business cards from both the agents and the visitors. Have you ever had somebody walk into your open house and say, I'm a real estate agent? Oh, really? Do you have a card? And it's like, no. I was like, how many real estate agents are out there who don't have a card on them? Okay. But sometimes they're purporting to be an agent when they aren't an agent, and there's no like crime being committed. They're just not telling you the truth. But I get cards from everybody. And again, this is about successful open houses. So when the prospect walks into the house, I never give them my card, right? And I do not leave them out on the countertop. I do not leave flyers out there. What do I do? First thing I say to them, once I realize that we're getting along great, I say to them, do you have a card? And so, it's right up there with giving them my name. I always give them my first and my last name, because if I give them my first and my last name, I'm inclined to get a first and a last name back, right? And part of the principle of working with people is I repeat their name. People love to hear their names, so I repeat their name back. I just want to make sure I got it right. So I always do that. But in business cards, I always say, "Oh, do you have a card?" And why? Because if you give them your card, they are never going to call you. How many people have had people call them from the card? I've wasted so much money on business cards. I don't do that anymore. I don't give them a card. I ask them for their card. And then what do I say? Well, okay. So if I find a really good property for you, is this a good email address? Well, no, because they got their business email address. So they say, well, here, let me give you my personal email address. I get it every time, right? If I see a run, don't walk, and I say this specifically, if I see a run, don't walk property, is this a good phone number? No, that's my office. Let me give you my cell phone. Now I've got their email address. I've got their cell phone number. Listen, I work with lawyers, right? I can get any attorney's cell phone number. So I have a whole bank of them. Okay. But that's what I do. And so I want to make sure I get that information. Can you please go back to the, I'm sorry, back here, this one? Lisa, is that it, hon? Yes. Okay. They have an open house library. Just go onto the website, car.org, and then just type in open house library. It's a Rebs product. Thank you for asking. Again, I want you to have all this. And I know I'm going fast, but now I'm worried about my time. Okay. Insist on business cards from both agents and visitors. When showing property, set the mood. Every light in the house is on, the oven light even. I turn on the refrigerator light. I turn on everything, right? Closet lights, I turn everything on. Every curtain window covering is open. When you walk into a model home, Do you have the same experience? Every light in the place is on, all the windows are open. My dad used to sell new home construction, and they would put in downsized furniture to make the rooms look bigger. Just crazy things that I learned, very brief things I learned from my father. But fireplace is roaring. Confirm with the occupant that that's okay. Don't burn the house down, please. Air conditioning, heating, is that a comfortable setting? Greet the customer at the door. Introduce yourself, okay? First and last name. Give them, whoops, let me get rid of that down there. Give them both, and they're inclined to give you both of theirs. I want their first name and last name. I'll never forget my business partner. Somebody came into the open house. We were there together, and the person came in, and my business partner, I had trained her to do that. She walks up and she goes, "Hi, my name is Nancy Lotstein." I don't know. I'm just pulling a name. I don't want to divulge it. She was, she said, "My name is," and gave her first and last name. And then the other people didn't respond. And so she turned to them and she said, "And your name is?" And the person that walked to the door says to her, "I'd really rather not give you my name." And so now I'm dying here. I'm like, okay, let's see what she says next. She goes, "Can I buy a vowel?" That was the funniest thing I ever heard, right? Geez, where did that go? I didn't teach you that. That's funny, right? But, can I buy a vowel? And then that broke the ice, and now they became great friends. They bought a house from her too. So at the end of the day, don't be shy about asking for people, asking for their names. So, can I buy a vowel? Where'd you get that, right? Don't wear sunglasses. I don't care if you think they make you look cool. You don't want to restrict. You want to be able to read their eyes. They're reading yours. Remember, people make a decision within 15 seconds if they're going to like you or not, whether they're going to work with you or not. And if you're wearing sunglasses, you're just too cool for school, okay? All right, stand with your back to a wall. Get out of the way. You don't want to block a view, all right? Or compromise your safety. You don't want people coming up from behind you, right? You want to back up against the wall. That's a real important concept. It's also a signal of what's important to them. If you've got this panoramic ocean view house and they are, and they don't care about the view, they go to the kitchen, then you might realize that the ocean view is not important to them. Maybe it's the kitchen, okay? All right, oops, let me get rid of that screen again. Okay, so accompany the customer on the tour. Think about the safety of the property. Remember those opioids in the medicine cabinet? I don't know why people seem to put their medicine in the medicine cabinet. But I've had it happen in open houses where, the bad guys always travel in pairs, right? So bad guys and gals travel in pairs. And so, the one of them engages you downstairs while the other one says, "I'm just going to go run up real quick." It's always 15 minutes before you close up, right? And then they go upstairs, and then you get the call from the owner of the property saying, "My drugs are gone." And so you don't want that phone call. And as a broker, I've had that phone call. And so it's like, okay, great. So the conversation. So talk little, listen more, learn more. Very, very important concept. Ask a lot of questions, okay? The more that you listen, the more that they will think you know. And that's going to be very important for your success in your open house. Be careful about puffing. Puffing only applies to selling used cars, right? Remember, always have somebody with you at your open house. Remember that, and I said this before, bad people travel in pairs for your safety of the property, to handle the rush, because I want you to have a lot of people at your open house. Lenders are great for that, by the way. You can get a lender to come with you to the open house. They're more likely to get the contact information of the visitors than you are, right? And sometimes you get rushed and you don't have time to talk to everybody. They can be better at interviewing, closing the client than we are. Pay attention, learn something new, and get their notes after the open house. You want their notes. You want to be able to contact the people, assuming that they got, approval on the do not call registry, right? Okay, do not sit inside the house. Outside is where the decision is made to come into the house. Okay, do you have curb appeal? Make eye contact with passersby. Invite them into the open house. Have a guest register. Again, I showed you. Make sure it includes the do not call list language. I will send you ours if you want it. It's got all the requirement. For example, by entering your phone number, you give consent for a XYZ Realty agent to contact you, even if your name is on the federal do not call registry. The act of them putting their name on the list does not give you permission. And again, I teach this as well, so please don't get nailed for this. It's expensive. Okay. How about the open house visitor non-agency disclosure and signing? We talked about that. Have a list of available homes in the neighborhood, properties that are for sale, as well as homes that have sold recently. Put them in a slip sheet. Okay, put them inside of a 3-ring binder. Do not give them anything inside of a 3-ring binder. Trust me, if they've got what they want and they want to work with you, they don't need to take anything with them. So put it inside of a 3-ring binder, okay? Otherwise, they disappear. They get legs. They just disappear. Do not hand them to people. Bring and do the real estate related things that you've been putting off doing, okay? Handwrite your thank you notes to people you've met canvassing the neighborhood, right? To your sphere of influence, okay? Handwrite the envelopes. Do not use okay, put postage on them. Do not use bulk mailing postage. Do not use bulk mailing labels, right? Because they see that right away as a solicitation, okay? I always handwrite all my envelopes. Okay, let's talk about dialing for dollars. Call everybody you know and invite them to your open house. It's just an excuse to call. Remember, my open house, when I'm at the open house, it's not downtime. I have plenty to keep me busy, and I think I've given you quite a list. So for a brief conversation, so you're going to call somebody up, just have them on the phone for a short bit. Remember your sphere of influence. Now's a good time to catch up and invite them to the open house, okay? I haven't spoken with you in a while. I just had a moment to catch up, okay? Brian Buffini's Pop Buys, he has retired. I love Brian. He was my neighbor for a long period of time, and he didn't know he was my neighbor, but he was great, right? You want the mayor campaign going on. Remind people what you do for a living, okay? Be sure you understand the value of your time. Your job is not passive. Get out there and talk to people. Wear your logo. Everybody see my logo? There's no secret of what I do. I'm not a secret agent. Everybody knows what I do for a living. Okay, I'm in real estate. All right. Remember that real estate, again, is a full contact sport. Let's talk about the after. I'm hurrying. We're talking about the after. Leave a handwritten note, thank you note for the seller, occupant of the property. Tell them what went right, what went wrong, whatever. Say something nice. Okay, they'll remember you, and nobody does this, and you want them to remember you. You want to be memorable, and then remember, leave that gift card. Whatever it is, 5 lottery tickets, a gift card, a coffee shop card, whatever, okay, or a lottery ticket, all right? Double check all the doors and windows. Sometimes the bad people come back to the house through the doors and windows they left unsecured. That happens. Believe it or not, check the door hinges. I did have a case where they had taken the hinges, what do you call it, the pin out of the hinges. Crazy stuff, folks. You can't make this stuff up. Okay, show meeting controls. When you retrieve your sign, be sure to knock on the doors, again, thanking those who allowed you to place your sign on the property. Folks, if that is the only thing you do, you are bound to get clients out of this, okay? Even if they don't come to the open house, I don't care. I've done open houses, nobody showed up, but I sold so many houses off of my pre-strike stuff that I did, okay? So remember the gift card or the lottery ticket. Follow up with everybody who attended the open house, phone call, subject to the do not call admonitions, thank you notes. Remember to get out there and make it happen. That is the most important thing. We have all these things to tell you how to make all this money. It's going to matter to you. It's like kind of watching the workout on TV. If you're not doing the workout on TV, then the person on TV is getting all the health benefits. You need to be doing that stuff, okay? I want you to get out there. I want you to make it happen. And I do have some more stuff to show you. Let me see here. I have a whole library full of things that I know. This is open house suggestions. So prospecting scripts, tips for holding a safe open house. Sabrina will be sending you all these things. 6 ways to capture clients at open houses. Field Guide to Open Houses, probably one of the best publications I've seen NAR do. And it literally, and I just printed page 1, but if you go to their nar.realtor and just type in Field Guide to Open Houses, look at all this stuff. There's so much stuff in there. You really, what do you mean? It's paused. Resume. Okay, I'm sorry. I opened it up. Here it is. So Field Guide to Open Houses. Thank you, Justin. Thank you. It's very nice of you. Great stuff. Thank you very much. Listen, I want you to make money. I don't believe, we always have that saying, I want to waste my time, not yours. So I really want you to do things that are productive. I want you to make money, and I want you to take care of people. I've always told people that I'm here to help the homeless. I'm either here to help them become homeless or stop from being homeless. Those are very important things to me. Okay. Question. Thank you, Karina. Thank you. I love Okar. I'm sorry. I've just gotten the best reception, and I want to do things. I want to help you make money, and so and thank you to the Orange County Association of Realtors for making the presentation possible. I very much appreciate them. And then let's talk about YouTube for a second, because how true you can host a party, invite people to see the house. I see that on the Netflix series. Yeah, you can invite people. Just be very careful about any potential discriminatory conduct, anything like that. YouTube. So get your QR code reader ready. If you click on this QR code, you will get access to all of my YouTube videos, all the stuff that I've done. And I'm releasing paragraph by paragraph, like a paragraph a day, because I don't want to overwhelm anybody. But the BRBC is really not that tough. It's a document. It's 5 pages, right? But I want to make sure that you understand it. And so, and then on Wednesday evenings, thank you. On Wednesday evenings, I do a coffee with Kevin. So, send me an email and I'll get you in on that. But literally, it's just open season. Ask me any question you want. So YouTube, you can also go to @Burke Real Estate Consultants, Inc. Please remember to like and subscribe. Like, because it makes me feel good. Subscribe, because then you get my updates. So every time I release a paragraph, it'll show up in your YouTube when you open it. And if there's anything else that you think would be interesting, please let me know. Please let Okar know. All right. And I'm sorry to put that on. Oh, thank you. You subscribe. Yes, thank you. It's really been hard for me to get traction on it. I don't know why. I had somebody go to the YouTube and didn't watch my thing on the buyer representation agreement, and they came back and they said, "Good God, where is everybody? They got to watch this." So I was really honored by that statement. So thank you. Anyway, I'm here to help you. I want you to do well. And I will be in Long Beach next week at the convention. I hope I get to see you there at the business meeting, they call it. I hope to get to see you there. It's one of my favorite, I've got this song about it. It's my favorite time of the year, right? Because we get to actually go out and network with each other and do all kinds of stuff. I do a newsletter that goes out once a week. You got to send me an email. I don't put people on it unless they ask to be put on it. I know you get barraged with emails and stuff like that, but if you want the newsletter, it goes out, 1 time per week. I proof it 3 times. I have other people that proof it because I don't want to have to print a retraction. So there's my email address again. Anything I can help you with. If you want to get the newsletter, send me an email. I will make sure you get it. And again, Orange County Realtors, thank you for such a warm reception. If you're a new realtor, listen, I'm going to tell you something. I'm a new realtor every day. I want you to know that. I get up every day. My wife thinks I'm insane, right? We're up at 4 o'clock. I'm just so excited to help somebody. I get up, I get on the internet, I get on the computer, I got people saying things, doing stuff like that. But I want you to be okay. So if you're a new real estate agent, there are so many great things that you can do. Just, make sure you get good counsel, talk to the right people. And one of the things I did not put in here, I wished I had, everything I know about real estate, I learned by my association with the association. Be involved with Orange County Realtors. Be involved with the California Association of Realtors. Be involved. That's where you're going to learn everything. Okay? Very, very, very important. All right? Thank you so much for that. That was a great question. And I think that's all I got. So, hey, everybody, did I do it? 5 o'clock, right? Yes. You're wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here. I so appreciate you. I hope to get to see you, as we say in Del Mar, around the track. And again, remember me, consider me a resource. I want to help you. So email me, call me on the phone. and I am happy to help you. So if I send you an email, you'll see I've got a Calendly link on there that we can just chat for half an hour or so. And thank you, Karina. Again, I want you to look good, folks, because I don't think real estate is really that hard. I think we complicate it. I think we overdo it. We make it hard. And I don't think it's really that hard a business. I think it's all about FaceTime. It's all about being in front of people, and people do business with you because they like you. And I could go on for hours. But anyway, thank you all for being here. I so appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful day. And again, reach out to me if I can help in any way. And thank you again to the Orange County Association of Realtors and Sabrina for listening to all this. But you're the best. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day today. Thanks for being here. Take care for now.